Most people at the dog park didn't notice how his German Shepherd responded to hand signals instead of voice commands, or how the old man could read tracks in the dirt that looked like nothing to everyone else. They just saw a retiree walking his well-behaved dog. They had no idea they were watching a master at work. Welcome to the Human Stories. Before we begin this powerful story of hidden expertise and unbreakable bonds, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from today? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button. These stories matter. Riverside Park opened its gates every morning at 5:30 a.m., but Mike Sullivan and his German Shepherd, Rex, were always there by 5:45. Rain or shine, snow or heat, they walked the same route through the park, past the playground, around the pond, through the wooded trail that most visitors avoided because it was too isolated. At 62, Mike looked like every other early morning dog walker. Gray hair kept military short, worn jeans, a jacket that had seen better years, and boots that were functional rather than fashionable. He nodded to the other regulars, smiled at children who asked to pet his dog, and generally blended into the background of suburban park life. But Rex wasn't like other dogs. While golden retrievers and labradoodles ran around chasing tennis balls and sniffing each other randomly, Rex moved with purpose. He responded to subtle hand gestures that most people missed entirely. When Mike stopped and pointed at the ground, Rex would immediately focus on that exact spot, his nose working with the precision of scientific equipment. "Beautiful dog," Sarah Martinez had said one morning, jogging past with her coffee. "What kind of training does he have?" "Just the basics," Mike had replied, which was technically true if you considered 15 years of military working dog operations to be basic training. What Sarah and the other park regulars didn't know was that Rex was a retired military working dog, MWD Rex K458, with more confirmed finds than most entire K9 units. And Mike wasn't just his handler. He was Master Sergeant Michael Sullivan, who had spent 15 years teaching military dogs to track everything from hidden explosives to enemy combatants in terrain where a single mistake could end a mission permanently. They'd served together in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. Rex had found IEDs that saved entire convoys, tracked insurgents through mountain terrain that satellites couldn't map, and located missing soldiers in conditions that would challenge the best human trackers. When they both retired 3 years ago, Mike couldn't imagine being separated from the dog who had been his partner through the most dangerous work either of them would ever do. So they'd come to Riverside Park, where the most dangerous thing Rex had to find was an occasional lost frisbee. Until the morning, everything changed. Mike was reading tracks in the soft dirt near the playground, not because he was looking for anything in particular, but because 30 years of habit made him notice patterns in ground disturbance the way other people notice the weather. Rex was investigating a scent trail that probably belonged to a raccoon from the night before. That's when the screaming started. "Emma! Emma!" Mike looked up to see a woman running frantically around the playground area, calling a name over and over. Other early morning visitors started gathering, asking questions, offering to help search. "She was right here," the woman was saying to a park maintenance worker who had rushed over, playing on the swings. I turned around for 1 second to throw away her juice box, and when I looked back, she was gone. Mike walked over slowly, Rex at his side. "How long ago?" he asked quietly. The woman, mid-30s, wearing running clothes, clearly terrified, looked at him with the desperate hope that comes when someone, anyone, offers to help. "Maybe 5 minutes? 10 at the most. She's 7 years old, blonde hair, wearing a pink jacket." "Did she know not to leave the playground area?" Mike asked, his voice calm and methodical. "Yes, we've talked about it. She knows to stay where I can see her. But she's curious. If she saw something interesting, she might—" Mike was already looking at the ground around the swings, reading the story written in footprints and disturbed leaves. Rex had picked up on his handler's change in focus and was waiting for instructions. "What's your name?" Mike asked the woman. Lisa Chen. Please, I've called 911, but they said it might be too late to—" "Lisa," Mike said, cutting her off gently, "I need you to stay here in case Emma comes back, and I need you to call the police again and tell them you have someone helping who knows what they're doing." He knelt down next to Rex and pointed to a small sneaker print in the dirt near the swing set. Rex immediately put his nose down and began working the scent. What happened next was 15 years of specialized training compressed into the most important search of their civilian lives. Mike didn't search randomly. He didn't call Emma's name or make noise that might scare a lost child into hiding. Instead, he read the ground like a book, following a story written in footprints, broken twigs, and scent trails that were invisible to everyone else but perfectly clear to a team that had tracked targets through enemy territory for over a decade. "She went that way," Mike said, pointing toward the wooded trail, "but not alone." Lisa Chen's face went white. "What do you mean, not alone?" Mike was studying the tracks more carefully now, his trained eye picking up details that would have been meaningless to most people. 2 sets of footprints, one small, one adult-sized. The adult prints showed the kind of careful placement that suggested someone trying not to leave obvious tracks. "Lisa, I need you to call 911 again right now," Mike said, his voice carrying an authority that hadn't been there moments before. "Tell them this isn't a lost child case anymore. This is an abduction." While Lisa made the call, Mike was already working with Rex the way they'd worked together in combat zones. Silent hand signals directed the dog to specific scent trails. Rex would indicate a direction, and Mike would read the physical evidence to confirm what the dog was telling him. They moved into the woods, following a trail that led away from the main park paths toward the back exit that most visitors didn't even know existed. Mike noted broken branches at the right height for someone carrying a struggling child, footprint depth that suggested the adult was moving quickly and carrying extra weight. "This is 911. What's your emergency?" Mike took Lisa's phone. "This is Master Sergeant Michael Sullivan, retired military police. I have a confirmed child abduction in progress at Riverside Park. Suspect is on foot, heading toward the north parking area through the wooded trail. I'm in pursuit with a military working dog." There was a pause. "Sir, did you say military working dog?" "Affirmative. MWD Rex K458, specialized in human tracking. We have a confirmed trail and are in pursuit. ETA on response units?" "Units are en route. ETA 6 minutes. Sir, are you trained for this kind of operation?" Mike looked ahead through the trees, where Rex had stopped and was indicating a fresh scent. 15 years, 3 combat zones, 47 successful recoveries. We're trained. They moved faster now, Mike reading the signs that told him they were closing the distance. Fresh footprints, disturbed vegetation that hadn't had time to spring back. And Rex's body language told him everything he needed to know about how close they were to their target. At the edge of the woods, near the north parking area, Rex stopped and gave the silent alert that Mike recognized immediately. Target acquired. Through the trees, Mike could see a blue sedan with the engine running. A man in his 40s was trying to get a struggling little girl into the back seat while she fought and screamed. Mike had 2 choices: wait for backup or act immediately while the child was still in sight. He chose what he'd been trained to choose. "Rex, watch," he whispered, pointing toward the car. Rex immediately understood and began moving silently through the underbrush to position himself for whatever came next. Mike approached the vehicle using techniques that had kept him alive in places where noise meant death. Silent movement, using cover, positioning himself so he couldn't be seen until he was ready. The man was still struggling with Emma, trying to force her into the car, when Mike stepped out of the tree line. "Stop right there," he said. his voice carrying the kind of calm authority that comes from facing much more dangerous situations with much higher stakes. "Let the girl go and step away from the vehicle." The man spun around, startled, and Mike could see immediately that this wasn't a professional criminal. This was someone who had made a terrible decision and was now panicking. "Who are you?" the man demanded, still holding onto Emma's arm. "Someone who's very good at finding people," Mike said, "and someone whose dog is currently positioned behind your car in case you try to run." The man looked around frantically and spotted Rex, who was sitting motionless but alert, exactly where Mike's hand signal had directed him. "Let the girl go," Mike repeated. "The police are already on their way. The only question now is whether this ends quietly or whether it gets complicated." For a moment, everything was still. Then Emma Chen broke free and ran toward Mike, who positioned himself between her and the man while keeping his eyes on the potential threat. "It's okay, Emma," Mike said gently. "Your mom is waiting for you at the playground." The man stood by his car looking at Mike, at Rex, at the little girl who was no longer within his reach. Whatever he'd been planning, it clearly hadn't included encountering someone who moved like law enforcement and traveled with a dog that looked like it had been trained for war. He got in his car and drove away, but not before Mike had memorized the license plate and noted every detail about the vehicle and the suspect. The police arrived 4 minutes later to find Mike sitting on a park bench with Emma Chen, who was drinking water from his thermos and explaining to Rex that she'd been scared, but she knew someone would find her. "Sergeant Martinez, Metro PD," the first officer said, approaching with the kind of cautious respect that comes from dealing with someone who clearly knows what they're doing. "You called this in?" "Master Sergeant Sullivan," Mike replied, standing and shaking the officer's hand. "Retired MP. This is Rex, retired MWD. We tracked the suspect to the north parking area, where he was attempting to force the child into a blue sedan, license plate Charlie Delta 7489. Sergeant Martinez was already radioing the information. Vehicle description? Mike provided details that were so precise and complete that it was clear he'd been trained to observe and remember under pressure. Make, model, year, distinguishing features, suspect description, timeline of events. "Sir," Martinez said after calling in the APB, "with your permission, I'd like to get a formal statement. This kind of detail, you've done this before." "Different country, same job," Mike said simply. 2 hours later, after the formal statement was completed and the suspect was in custody, picked up at a gas station 12 miles away, exactly, matching Mike's description, Lisa Chen approached Mike at the park. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, Emma holding her hand and looking up at Rex with the kind of admiration reserved for real heroes. "No thanks necessary," Mike said. "Just glad we were here." "But you weren't just here by accident, were you?" Lisa asked. "I mean, you knew exactly what to do. The police said you used to do this professionally." Mike looked down at Rex, who was sitting patiently, still alert, still ready for whatever came next. We both did. Different missions, same skills. "Mom," Emma said, "can I pet the hero dog?" Mike smiled and gave Rex a hand signal. The dog immediately relaxed into friendly mode, tail wagging, ready for attention from a little girl who was safe, because he'd done his job one more time. Word spread quickly through the park community after that. The story of the quiet man with the trained dog who'd found Emma Chen became local legend. Parents felt safer knowing Mike and Rex were around. Children asked their parents if they could get dogs like Rex for protection, but Mike deflected the attention the same way he always had. To him, it wasn't heroic. It was just what you did when you had the skills and someone needed help. The local police department approached him about consulting on search and rescue operations. The Park Service asked if he'd be interested in a part-time security position, but Mike declined them all. "Rex and I are retired," he told them. "We just like to walk in the park." But retirement for a master sergeant and a military working dog doesn't mean the training stops working. It just means you're selective about when you use it. Every morning at 5:45, Mike and Rex continued their routine, walking the same paths, reading the same signs, staying ready for whatever the day might bring. Most mornings, the biggest challenge was avoiding other dogs who wanted to play with Rex. But sometimes, when someone needed help, when a child was lost or in danger, when the situation called for skills that most people didn't have, Mike and Rex were exactly where they needed to be. Because that's what you do when you've been trained to find people who don't want to be found. You don't stop when you retire. You just wait for the mission to find you. And in a quiet suburb where families brought their children to play in the park, having a master sergeant and his military working dog taking their morning walks meant that everyone was a little bit safer, even if they didn't know it. Mike Sullivan never told anyone about his background unless he had to. Rex never showed off his training unless it was needed. They just walked their route, watched their surroundings, and stayed ready. Because some skills are too important to retire, some partnerships are too valuable to dissolve, and some missions never really end. They just take different forms. So the next time you see someone at the dog park whose dog responds to hand signals, whose owner reads the ground like a book, whose presence somehow makes you feel safer without knowing why, remember Mike and Rex. Remember that sometimes the most qualified person for an emergency is the one who looks like they're just out for a morning walk. Have you ever met someone like Mike? Someone whose retirement hobby was really just a different way of staying ready? Share their story in the comments below. Tell us about the quiet professionals who never really stop serving. Thank you for watching The Human Stories. If this story moved you, subscribe and share it with someone who believes in the bonds between humans and their working animals. Because the world needs more teams like Mike and Rex, veterans who never stop protecting, even when their service takes them to peaceful places. Until next time, remember that heroes come in all forms. Sometimes they wear uniforms. Sometimes they wear jeans and walk their dogs in the park. But they're always watching, always ready, always prepared to step up when someone needs help. And sometimes, the most powerful backup you can have has 4 legs and a nose that can track anything, anywhere, anytime.